The men's basketball team has had its ups and downs on the season, and Zach Aaron now joins me to see if they could get back on the right track.
Well, Chris, the Pioneers men's basketball team had a very busy schedule this weekend, playing 3 games in 3 cities in just under 48 hours. The Pioneers began their trip on Friday by visiting the Cincinnati Christian University Eagles, who were in second place in the KIAC. The Eagles went 15 of 30 from beyond the arc and ended up winning big by a score of 88-63. Michael Hill led all scorers in the game with 25 points by going 5 for 8 from three-point land. Nick Brown led the Pioneers in scoring. The Pioneers were not able to pull in many rebounds, only coming up with 17 defensive rebounds. The Eagles had 20 offensive boards. The next day, the Pioneers went to Richmond, Indiana to take on the IU East Red Wolves, a very evenly matched team with the Pioneers. The game proved to be as close as the two teams exchanged ties and lead changes 3 times in the second half. Unfortunately, the Pioneers were not able to keep up towards the end due to exhaustion and ended up losing by a score of 93-88. Gabe McNeil had 24 points, and Robbie Hetherington finished with 18 points and 11 assists. McNeil, Nazga, and Brown all played all 40 minutes of this game, and Hetherington played all but the final 4 seconds. The Pioneers committed 15 turnovers that turned into 18 points for the Red Wolves. The next day, the Pioneers went down to Midway College for a neutral site matchup with the St. Louis College of Pharmacy. The Pioneers initially got off to a slow start, being down 15-12 early on, but they quickly rebounded from the deficit and never looked back, salvaging a win of the road trip by a score of 95-79. Nick Brown led the game in scoring with 22 points. Leading the scoring for the Utetics was Sean Mankowski with 20. Off the road trip, the Pioneers are now 10-13 overall and 5-8 in KIAC play. The Pioneers hold the 8th and final playoff spot in the KIAC standings, but are only 2.5 games out of 4th place. That makes the last 4 games of the season extremely important so they can try to host a first-round game. The Pioneers now have a rest period of a few days until Saturday, which will be a huge test for the Pioneers as they have a rematch with the number 2 nationally ranked IU Southeast Grenadiers. They lost this matchup on the road in early January by a score of 110-94.
Zach, the Pioneers, they've had their struggles all season long on the road. They do take one at the St. Louis College of Pharmacy. But Zach, how big of an issue is this? You see they're under 500 in conference and they sit 8th right now in the rankings.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem for the Pioneers, especially because the bench is just so limited. This weekend there were only 8 players that suited up other than the 3 players that suited up other than the 5 starters. And that's huge because exhaustion's really beginning to take a toll on this team. And especially as we come down to the wire, these games are all so important.
Now, Zach, we did see a little bit more bench. We saw TJ Lanier getting some of his first action since the first game of this season. How big does that help this team, that they have a few more bench players?
Yeah, the return of TJ Lanier is huge to the Pioneers. He's a huge presence on both sides of the ball. He has a lot of speed. But also off the bench, don't discount freshman Brandon Kamick. When he played St. Louis College of Pharmacy, he got a few points of his own, and he's a good player on the boards to have.
All right, thanks, Zach. The men's team really trying to get something going and really salvage their season a little bit. This week in national sports, the big game was the center of attention as the Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks battled for the NFL championship. The game was very one-sided, and it started from the first play from scrimmage. 12 seconds into the game, the Seahawks scored on a safety, and there was no stopping them from there. The Seahawks would score the first 36 points of the game before Denver was able to get its only score of the game. The Seahawks clinched their first championship with a final score of 43-8. In more NFL news, the Hall of Fame class of 2014 was announced over the weekend. The headliners of this year's class are former Giants defensive lineman Michael Strahan and Buccaneers linebacker Derek Brooks. The rest of the class is rounded out by Andre Reed, Walter Jones, Aeneas Williams, Claude Humphrey, and Ray Guy. Notables that did not make it in this year were Jerome Bettis, Marvin Harrison, and Tony Dungy. The 7 men will be enshrined this summer. Duke and Syracuse lived up to expectations as they went down to the wire. The battle between the new ACC rivals pitted the number 17 team in Duke against number 2 Syracuse. The game was close throughout and went to overtime tied at 78. In overtime, the game stayed true and was close the whole time. In the end, Syracuse came away with a hard-fought 2-point win, with the final being 91-89. Afterwards, Syracuse coach Jim Boeheim said, "We've had a lot of games that have been here that are great. There's never been one as good as this one." One of the biggest events in sports starts this week. The Winter Games in Sochi will begin with the opening ceremony on Friday. The noble faces for this ceremony will be Russian leader Vladimir Putin. U.S. representatives such as Billie Jean King and 52 other nations will be in attendance, as well as the Olympics will begin this Friday in Sochi. Real big stuff coming out of there. After the break, I had a chance to talk with the new head coach of the track and field program about himself and what he wants to do here at Point Park. We'll be right back after this.